All right, guys. Welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner podcast. I'm Dylan. I'm your host, joined by my blue collar badass. Matt and I liked our format from last week so much that we decided to do it again. So we're just going to jump right in. Here's Matt and Dylan bullshit. We're going to talk about personal excellence again, because it is that important. We're going to talk about why firms need to know their numbers and the coming 18 months and what you can do to prepare for it. So with that, take it away, Dylan and Matt.
How you doing, man?
Good, man. I'm in all the stuff I've got going, like it's a weird time of year, I think. Like there's I'm still trying to get deals done, still trying to get stuff across the finish line, and then the software side, which is what I'll stick to here, is it's that time of year where people are like they're half checked out and they're half like ready to do stuff, right? They've got some downtime, so they'll like look at software, they'll test stuff, but they may or may not make a decision until like next year, right? Or pull the trigger basically until January. Like they'll do it in for budgets this year, which like leads to it leads to like a lot of stuff. But I think one of the things that like it comes down to, and like, we'll leave this in for the show, but like is people don't do future planning until December. And even then, like people's like mind isn't in it. So no decision gets made till like January, and then it becomes February, and then they just kick the can down the road and it never happens. And so like good, better, otherwise, that's some of what I'm dealing with, is that whole like, well, it's almost Thanksgiving, so I'm checked out. I'm not really working, not really doing anything. So okay. Then it goes to, well, it's December, and you know, I we're not gonna really do anything by the end of the year, even though I'm still gonna be working and clocking in for the next 3 weeks. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
We're gonna coast.
So it's like, and I'm already feeling that from people, is like this checked out mentality to like the end of the year. Like last I looked, you've got 45 days till the end of the year, and like you're just gonna punt. Like, okay. Uh so it's just like but at the same time, like, dude, I have top 5 engineering firms doing trials right now. So
That is
like,
awesome.
yeah, like it's like that good and bad of it, right? Like you have some people that like can't make a decision to save themselves, and then you have other people that are like, well, now's the time. Things are a little slow. Let me go through and test stuff while like nobody's barking down my throat to get a project out the door. So like, and that's just, and you could see that in the mentality of these two like opposites, right? You have a top 5 engineering firm doing trials and going through stuff, like ready to make decisions, basically. And then you have these not top 5 or top 100 firms, that can't decide their way out of a paper bag. So it's just this, and then it's like, you know, life of a entrepreneur, and like as much blood, sweat, and tears I put into this, like, it's like, shit, man, do I actually have this in me? Or like, should I go through this? To like all the stuff we talked about even last week, is like, man, like, am I asking the right questions, doing the right things? And then, as my wife likes to remind me, and says I should have a sign up that says, it takes time. So there's like, I mean, it's just a lot of stuff, man, like going on. But, it's, I try to take it, with as positive a spin as I can, because what else are you going to do?
Well, listen, bro, that's the grind and the toil of being an entrepreneur, right? And the reason why you'll succeed is because you'll stay later and longer than anybody else. if you go into the U of M football locker rooms, those who stay will be champions, right? And it is gosh darn true, man. And we talked about putting in the reps last week. It's all part of it, but you're out to how many firms right now?
I've got like trials going right now. So like AU is a big turning point for
I
me.
was going to say, are these all from that?
So the big firm is not, and until they sign a deal, they'll remain nameless. But
Of course.
I'll tell you off air. Um, the others, I've got 4 trials going right now, 4 actives, and then these are like, and they're firm-wide licenses. So it's right now the whole name of the game is adoption and getting people to use it. And, yes, so this is a really good point. So when I talk to people about stuff like this, you have 2 reactions to it and maybe 3. Because like there's always the people that were like, dude, you just got to get it out there and get in front of people. And I'm like, yeah, but it's got to like work, you know, like years ago, it's like, dude, it's got to like work and be good. And, like shit has to be right. And they were like, no, just get it out there. And I'm like, no. So, but this is like that typical thing of like, and these were guys that have done really well. They've made some money and they're like, just get it out. And I'm like, like it's got to work. Like you don't understand engineers. And some of this is like my market is different. I like yes and no. Like putting out a crap product is not a good strategy. And so I've kind of always had that. So that's one. And then 2 is so that was like the beginning. And then now where I'm at is like I wanted to get it out, but I want adoption, right? I want people to really use it and take advantage of it and run the shit out of it. And while that's costing me dollars today, and so this is the thing that I get, like people are like, well, how many licenses did you sell? Like how much revenue you do? And it's like, dude, like I'm in some of the biggest firms now. Like the volume of like the number of licenses, it's a firm-wide license, at least until I choose otherwise. So like use the shit out of it. And that's what I want is adoption and people to, because the whole goal here is to save people time and to get people using it and actually like benefit from it. If you don't use it, you will get no benefit from it. It's like having a gym membership. Like you got to use the thing.
Yep.
So, but like it's funny in how people like react to that, and I can tell immediately where their mindset is at. Is this a dollar today or is this relationship down the road type of person? And even like at Arte, like I got some of those mixed responses from people, and it's like, so you really don't play a long game whatsoever. Good to know. Like, and that's so to like that question, I know I put a lot more into it, but like is how do you think about this stuff? And actually like so some of this is like I wrote an article about it today. Like you're gonna have a lot of tough decisions ahead. And what decisions are you making today that are gonna help you in 18 months? Because construction lags behind everybody else. So you have an 18-month window to like get your shit together before it hits the fan for construction. So like do that now or suffer in 18 months.
That's just it, man. That's why they call it separation season. This is the time to be doing your planning and to be keeping your foot on the gas and driving as fast as you possibly can, chasing every legitimate lead and keeping yourself moving at the pace that you have been. And I'm fully expecting an economic catastrophe of sorts, right? But I know damn well we're going to blow right through that as a company. And it's because of what we're doing today and that we're not stopping. We're not getting lazy and saying, well, I got 45 days to, fart around with my feet on the desk and talk about the good old days. We're operating just as if it was springtime, right? And in construction, there's not the production levels drop a little bit now and for the next few months on some of our jobs, but the pre-con doesn't if we don't let it. and we're planting those seeds to keep that forest growing constantly. And same thing you're doing, but if you're out to 4 or 5 firms right now, that's nothing to overlook, man. That's huge. So congrats, but you just got to keep grinding.
Yeah. And like, I mean, so of the 5 firms I've got right now, 2 of which have, well, one has 450 people, MEP firm. The other is thousands of employees. So like the counts are, yeah, or like, user base, all that kind of stuff. Like, and this is, in construction, I think we forget that too, right? So like, how many clients does like Schaefer have, right? Like, how many active projects do you have right now?
Oh, 4 or 5.
Like, and that's the same thing on like engineering. Like, yeah, like one of our clients. So like, again, when I was doing design work all the time, like I had really one client that I had to take care of, and that was Ascension Healthcare. And in Indiana, they did at the time $300 million in construction a year. That includes FF&E. So just figured 200 million in like build
Yeah,
cost.
pretty good odds.
Like, and we were one of 2 engineering firms that did all of their work in Indiana. Like, you just take care of them and you're good.
Right, right.
So like, and I think this is like the thing that in the B2B world and in construction specifically that we forget. You don't need 100 clients. You need 5 good ones.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that. There are contractors, as I'm sure there are engineers, as I'm sure there are software developers who their target market is just volume. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter who they're selling it to, doesn't matter what value they bring or returns they get. It's just volume. Stack it up, stack it up, stack it up. And I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that, but it ties real well into the conversation we had last week about what you're doing this for.
Yeah.
We're going to make a difference, and you can't make a real appreciable difference by just selling as many widgets as you possibly can. It doesn't work that way. I spent my entire day today, literally 7 hours straight, doing a strategic planning meeting for a company that isn't mine. I got invited. Now, they happen to be candidly clients of mine, one that I still am not allowed to name publicly, but they are taking the opportunity to not sit for the rest of the year, right? So they had this massive strategic planning meeting. They invited people from the community. I was one of them. I didn't know what to expect. I was kind of looking at it this morning like, shit, am I really going to devote my entire day to doing this? But I got there. They sit me at a table with six individuals who most of them I'd never met before. I have no idea who they are, their stories, or anything. And throughout the course of the day, we all of a sudden are having these in-depth conversations, setting up goals for the company, for the organization, for the next 5 years. And it was a pretty powerful day, man. Like, I was real leery about it, right? Like, I don't have time to give. I don't. But I did it for very good reasons. And I'm really glad I did, because it was cool to see the process happen. It was cool to see people really like get the fact that like you can't sit on your ass ever, but especially right now. Now is the time to like get all the stuff done that has been sitting, right? If you're not as busy as you were 3 months ago, get your housekeeping in order. And outside of numerous other things, I took away a lot of kind of techniques and tricks that I'm going to bring back into the construction company to just further our strategic initiatives. And so, kind of ties in the same thing. It was just cool to be a part of, but it's a major focus on just getting stuff done. And their goal of all these goals is to have this new strategic plan adopted and in place January 1st. That's pretty lofty. They're a big organization. I couldn't even tell you how many employees and consultants they have on board. But to take that, and this is a 5-year plan, to take a 5-year plan in 45 days and, sign it, ink it, and etch it in stone, that's pretty aggressive. And it just goes to show, like, to my original point, right? It's differences in the way I approach business to the way that the volume builder does. I want relationships. I get to pick and choose who I work with, right? And I'm working with groups and with companies that have a similar mindset and that are aggressive and want to kick ass and take names. And, we can provide ultimate value to those people because they get it. Whereas the volume builders, again, nothing wrong with them. There's quite a few in my local cities here, but they don't provide value. They provide a quick service at best.
Yeah. I mean, those guys are typically like home builders, right? They're doing track homes and all that kind of stuff.
A lot of that.
Yeah, and like nothing wrong with that, right? You need housing, they provide a service, but it's again one and done, right? They're going to be in out and move on to the next thing. So there's time and place for all that. And I think too, like a lot of people forget that a decision is made in an instant, right? Like you make decisions very quickly and you do it all day long, right? And when it comes to like strategic planning, like, yes, you need to think through some stuff. You need to let it sit. You need to work through like alternatives or what can go wrong or contingencies for that. But by and large, those plans can come together pretty quickly so long as you've done all your kind of due diligence and research around that to make a decision. But when it comes to deciding, that means all other options are removed from the table. So like you can decide shit in an instant. Most people just don't ever make a decision, right? They don't actually decide. They think about stuff. And that's the difference. You could think about stuff for very, like, again, I read a lot of stuff, but you have to understand when you come to making a decision that is it. You've decided and you can move on, right? You're going to go along that path. And this is where, like, I think a lot of people get hung up is they spend too much time in that, like, it's really like they have the options laid out in front of them and they just choose to not decide, which is a decision. But like that's effectively what they end up doing is they have the choices in front of them and they just choose to not do anything. And I think a lot of people get stuck in that spot.
It's paralysis by analysis. I know it very, very well. It's
I don't
weak
even
and
know if it's
ineffective
that.
leaders.
They just don't. It's not. There's no analysis left. Like they have the two choices. You're either going left or right. You're either gonna hire more people and do more marketing, or you're just gonna suck it up. And like they just don't decide, which ends up being like they, are gonna suffer in 18 months. So like those are the like typically those choices are laid out for people. They just never decide to do anything. So it's not even like they're just like they're thinking that not making a decision will insulate them from whatever consequences that would happen of making one, which is not true at all. But that's effectively what like they believe, even though they're not going to say it. But like I've seen it time and time again. It's not even analysis it's just they have the choices and they decide not to make it. And that just blows my mind every single time because they won't own anything. And then they think they can like, it's fine and it'll all work out. And it's like magic fairyland, which you should read Atlas Shrugged if, you really want to understand what that comes down to.
Those are the construction firms that I love. The ones that never make the
They go out of
decision because
business.
I'm going to fucking run them over, right? I'm going to just keep plowing because there's a point in time, right? You got to trust the analysis you've done. You got to trust what the information your team is putting in front of you. And at some point in time in our level and our roles, you just got to bite the bullet and make a damn decision. And you're going to make a lot of wrong decisions. That's part of growing and learning. You fail fast and you learn from it. You don't do it again, but you got to make the damn decisions. You have to be confident in your decision. And then that's it. There's no more thinking about it. You move on to the next problem and keep marching.
Well, and two, like, I think people, so like when I think about decisions, right? Like, so in like my software world for Cowabunga, it's like, okay, am I going to implement a new feature, or am I going to build a new product, or am I going to just go with what we have, right? Because that's a ongoing decision matrix of, do I add something? Do I not? Do I build a new product and a new feature? Would enough people like this, right? It's an ongoing decision of that. And there's always going to be a time where you get more information around a given decision that you know is out there, right? Like, you know that you're going to have to make a decision to do something or not at any given period of time. And so, like, just like for you, is like, do I go after that next project? Do we want to take that on? Right. Those are decisions that you make on a constant basis, aligned to your ultimate goals. Right. And I think that's the lens through which people don't look through is, if my goal is to purely serve electrical engineers, then I should, and low voltage guys, security stuff, then I should never build anything for other disciplines. But that's not necessarily the goal, right? The goal is to help architects and engineers save time and money, which is why I built a solution to automate sheet creation, because that's for every single discipline. So, like, I think there's always going to be a continual analysis of decisions, not that you made the right or wrong one and looking back on it, but a continual analysis of new decisions to make according to your goals. And I think, and that's a very distinct nuance in, like, reevaluate. You don't necessarily reevaluate the decisions you made. You have a new fork in the road for that. It might be the same decision, right? Do we continue development on this thing, even though we started down the path? Do we continue or not? Right. And those are a lot of the, I think, decisions that people end up having to make. And for the most part, like within construction firms, it's usually, do I take a project? Do I not? Do I keep doing stuff for this client or not? You're contractually obligated to finish the projects that you have. So, like, you're kind of, your choice has been made for you. Where I think in construction firms and design firms, really the industry, your choices that you should be making are we doing more events? Do we decide to do this event again? Do we decide to support this charity event again? Do we decide to host this thing again? Or are you doing it because you just did it last year and not reevaluating whether that was a good event to go to or not? And so I think there's a lot of decisions like that that aren't reevaluated. They've just, we do this because we've always done it, not whether it's a good idea or not. So it got evaluated once and then it's done forever. And I don't think that's a good manner to make decisions either. Like, you go to stuff to go to it, or what do you get out of it? How do you reevaluate it? And it's really looking at decisions through a bigger lens. And when you could do that, your decision-making process at least will have a North Star. It's never to say whether it's good or bad, but you'll at least have a lens through which you make decisions through. And that's, I think, what a lot of firms are missing. They come onto it and there's nothing to like evaluate decisions against, right? Does this align with my core values? Does this align with our mission? Does this, help my strengths or weaknesses? Does this add a skill, right? There's no like North Star to analyze decisions against. And so they end up just like trash bags, they're blowing in the wind.
We've talked about core values a ton over the last couple of years, and I've never heard it called the North Star like that. Anyways, that's a perfect way to put it. And in a culture-based organization, if you're not making 90% of your decisions based on whether or not they mesh with your core values, you're doing something wrong in my mind. And it goes from buying software to taking on a new client to buying a piece of equipment. There's value-based decisions and an analysis in everything. And it when you do it wrong because it hurts, right? You ever worked for a real asshole? We don't often, but it has slipped through the cracks. And in hindsight, you look back and, I should have seen the writing on the wall. Like, okay, yeah, this dude really doesn't match our culture. He really doesn't fit our core values. I should have walked away. And the mighty dollar sign sometimes wins in those conversations. But almost every single time when I stray away from our our vision, our core values and our culture, when I stray away from those and making decisions like that, it comes back to haunt me, at least in some fashion.
Yeah. I mean, like when you look at like, because so in me selling software, I deal with all these guys that want to compare me to free tools that are out there. And like, while that's all good and well, like that's fair enough. It's never an apples to apples comparison. Well, like, because nobody does what I do in software, right? Like, I can give you a 80% set of design documents, and let's just say design documents are 40% of a project. So I will do 32% of your project in, let's call it minutes, but just say hours. So, like, how do we want to compare that, right? Your free software that you don't use because your guys aren't bought into it and it's like complicated, as from your own admission. Like, you want to talk about ROI, like, let's, how much do you do and this is where people get uncomfortable. It's like, well, how much do you do in revenue, right? I will blow away any ROI calculation you want to put at me if we can agree that this is what it does. This is, percentage of project. Give me a revenue number like that you do in fee. It will more than pay for the $10,000 you're going to invest in it. Like,
Well, and that's thanks to you and your mindset, right? That's thanks to you not dumping your software out there before it was ready, right? Before you knew that this shit worked. And now you've got that. That's bigger and better ammo to have in your belt than almost anything, because going into those sales calls, my software works. It does what I say it's going to do. I have the same thing with our design build model. Like, I know it works. I've tested it over and over again. We are constantly refining it, but I can go in front of anybody and say, this is the model, this works. And I'm 100% confident. Like, it's good on all fronts, right? I used to get nervous on sales calls. I used to hate it. I used to hate doing presentations. And I realized, maybe now just because I'm getting older, but like back then, I never really bought into it. And I didn't fully believe the shit I was saying. Once you believe it, it's selling ice to Eskimos easy, right? I mean, not everyone can do it, but if you have a product you believe in 100% with no doubt in your mind that your product, service, whatever is what you say it is, even if it's not the best, even if it's mediocre, but you know what it is, that's a huge benefit.
yeah, I mean, in this, it goes to like trying to get an apples to apples comparison in whatever you're doing, right? And whatever decisions you have to make. I think as I talk to more and more firms, and even, in the firms that I work for, like, one, people really do not understand their numbers. Like, it's been clear to me for a very long time, basically since I've been in the A&E world. Like, people do not, they have no idea what shit costs, even internally, like they have budgeted hours for a project, but that doesn't really matter. They don't know like how many hours per square foot of design takes. They have no clue. They have no idea on numbers. They know what people get paid, maybe. They don't really want to talk about money. And so when like I have these conversations with people that want to balk at like price, it's like, dude, well, what do you make? And like, how many people are you looking to hire? Again, like, and if I can save you from hiring one person, I just paid for it. But like, so let's be clear on all this stuff. Like, but this is, again, people don't, in design firms especially, just do not know their numbers. So if you're a design firm out there, understand your numbers and your math, because you will then do better than pretty much everybody else, because you understand your numbers. You understand what you can bid projects for. You understand what you can hire people for. You understand like profit and margin numbers. Like, and it's shit that, you deal with on a daily basis. And most contractors know what their margin is. They know what their markup is. They know everything about it. And design firms have no clue. It's just like throwing shit at a wall. Let's see what sticks. And so when you go through that mentality, like, you can't accurately compare things to make decisions on when it comes to financials. You have like feelings and you think stuff is going to happen, but you have no clue on the like financial side of it, which then is just like bad decision making. Because if you go out of business, your decisions don't matter anyway. So like it when you go to zero, and this is like that whole risk like mitigation piece of it, is like going to zero means that no matter what your decision is, you're just screwed. So if you can mitigate going to zero, which is pretty easy, like in our world, right? It's really hard to go to zero unless you get like sued. You did something so horrific that you're getting sued out of existence, or your cash flow was so bad. And like, you have to make really bad choices to go to zero in like our world. So in that, like when you look at, because again, looking back at 0809, I think we have so much to learn as an industry, that for most people, 0809, like, because it was really September of 08. So nobody hurt in 08. 09, you didn't really hurt. People didn't really start feeling it till 2010 when like things really slowed down and really hit. So from our first indicators, right, and you now have it with like Amazon and all the tech companies laying people off, you have 18 months. The clock just started. So if you have 18 months to make these decisions, like what are you going to do in the next 18 months to prevent any downfall for it? Like these are the tough decisions that you have moving forward. And so when you don't look at things as apples to apples comparisons, when you don't learn your mistakes from 10 years ago, when you don't know your financials, when you don't make decisions on core values, like in 18, you'll survive the next 18 months. After that, how many architecture and engineering firms went out of business, like,
Oh, same with builders.
yeah, like,
you'll see a drop and good. That's the weak are going to fall off and get eaten. And frankly, we need those people. But the people that are listening to this show, hopefully are wanting something more than that mediocre existence and that untimely death that occurs, 18 months after the bad economy starts. Backing up real quick, what in your mind is the reasoning that A&E firms can't get their heads out of their asses by and large and figure out fee structure and how to charge people? And I get it, like I don't get it, I don't do it, but I imagine like it's a hard thing to estimate when you're talking about strictly man hours on a fairly intellectual process, right? You Dillon will design electrical service to a building or whatever it may be 3,000 times faster than I would, right? And it's not a great comparison, but between you and your next engineer or the engineering assistant, I mean, I get there's some complications there, but there's some like massive underlying reason why most firms can't figure that out?
So a lot of this is like historical, and I think so. I've tried to be, because I didn't necessarily grow up in the industry, but I coming into it like I did and having like the mindset that I do and doing business school and all this other stuff through that. I try to learn the historical pieces of it and why things happen the way that they do. Because there's so much, it's how our codes are written, right? That's why Chicago and New York each have their own electrical code, is because shit burned down from electrical buyers and the unions, but that's a different story. So, like, you have a lot of historical context around a lot of this stuff. And so, when it comes to design, historically, it was always because you have to go all the way back to architect as master builder in like the 1800s, right? So, the architect did a lot of the stuff that like you're doing now, but you didn't have like engineering outside of structural didn't exist, right? You had no lights, no heat, you cut a hole in the floor and that was your toilet. Like you didn't have those things. So like the engineering systems never existed. So historically it was architect as master builder, and you had very simple drawings, and the architect was, basically your GC of today. And so to execute their vision for a building. and the buildings that we have today are much more complicated than any of the buildings that we had, 100 years ago, right? When you talk about like JP Morgan and those guys that did a lot of the designs in the early 1900s, late 1800s. So, and you didn't have skyscrapers, right? Like you didn't have steel. So everything was wood construction. It was not hard. And so you go from that, and then over the years you had all these systems. In the 70s, you had HVAC as our VAV systems that we still use today and are mostly spec'd. Like those is when it came in, and that technology really hasn't changed much since the 70s. And then in electrical systems, and shit, even the 90s, like you had outlets that were few and far between. Go into an old airport. You know what I'm talking about? You had lights, again, that weren't crazy. You had um telephone jacks, right? And that was kind of it. Like you didn't have you didn't have all these computers, you didn't have all this technology. So I'm saying all this to say that like the amount of systems that we design today is far more than we've designed ever, right? Between security systems, and you talk about mechanical stuff and all the controls that go into it, which is its own deal. And then, architecture with the increase in fire codes and um, space breakups and occupancy ratings and firewalls, and like, this is going to be in like a hospital, this is B occupancy, this is going to be healthcare. Like you have all these things, but all that to say, and like, then it becomes harder to do that. But you have this historical thing of, it's, we get paid 10% of a project, right? And that's what it is. And we basically fix that fee up front instead of varying it with the project. So, because then you have, and the reason you would fix it, it goes two ways, right? As an owner, you want it fixed so that as costs increase, you're not paying your architect more for it. Or, but at the same time, now your architect has incentive to save money, right, on design and all that kind of stuff. But kind of. So you have like this historical thing of like, because everyone's basically opposed in that same event. You don't have aligned outcomes, right? Because an architect's getting paid on fixed fee based on the cost of the building, right? Because usually scale of building goes with fee percentage and hours that it takes to do it. And so you have a lot of this historical time data, but no one has ever taken that historical time data and actually applied it to a project, because we all want to believe that every project is unique, and it is, but like that not every project can be executed or like you can't take an average across projects. So uh, like that's part of it. The other part is like you have everybody's salaried, so like hours don't really count, but you have no other way to break down budgets other than in hours. And then so like I don't really I'm talking through all this, but there's not really a good answer as to why like they don't have it, because when you have to break it down to an hour because that's the only thing that you do, except that's not how you pay people. You pay them salaried by and large. So when you're doing these calculations, like it doesn't matter because they're all salaried. So like people aren't getting paid more or less. So that doesn't actually affect your bottom line. You just went over budget, but like who cares? So you had to break it down that way. But then there's no feedback loop, right? There's nothing to say that, well, we went over budget on every single project we did this year, but we still made money. Like, well, how does that happen? Right. In your world, that's a bunch of bullshit. You can't go over on every single project and then like still make money. But that happens in architecture and engineering firms because again, everybody's salaries are fixed. So like, yeah, I worked 20, 30, 40 hours or, 10% overtime, whatever, right? I worked 45 hours on average or 50 hours on average or 60 hours on average. It doesn't matter because I'm salaried. So you have this measuring stick against which like things don't matter, which is why you have such a high burnout rate, which is why people don't stay in the industry, which is why like you go down the list of stuff. So it's a bad feedback or really no feedback mechanism into what they're doing. because I pulled all the numbers and my boss didn't believe me. And I'm like, well, this is actual data from Deltec that we do all of our timesheets on. Like, how do you not believe this? And I segmented it by building size. And, I came out with an average, and you're not going to believe these numbers that are historical context for the firm. And I took like 40 like 30, 40 projects. Like, okay, this was not like the same team. This was not like, the good guys and like the B team. Like, it's just, this is what it is. So there's like a lack of belief, historical context, and how fees are set, and then no feedback into it to then like set that with a client, right? It's always been on percentage of build cost and estimated build costs up front, which we've all established that architects and engineers have no idea what anything costs. So it's really like, how much are you willing to spend on a building? Okay, great. We're going to take percentage of that. And then again, there's no real alignment of outcome for them. So I know that's a lot of words with not a real like answer to it, but that's just what I've been able to piece together for it. Is that's how it kind of comes about. And then they have the data, they have the information, like Deltec has all that stuff because that's what everybody uses for timesheets, but nobody like goes and pulls historical records and does it.
Huh. So what you're telling me is architects and engineers are lazy by nature.
They don't know any better. Like,
Kidding.
it's pure ignorance, man. Like, and it's just and like we've covered here before is, the architects that are the best talkers get promoted. The engineers that are the best talkers get promoted. Like, it's not, and then they have no business acumen. In all of my years, like there might be 3 guys that have an MBA, or took some financial classes that are in the firms that I'm in. So like they don't understand business, yet they're required to do this stuff. Nobody reads. Like, it's the amount of personal development or encouraged personal development, the amount of time, effort, and energy they spend outside of work on. And I mean, it's the same in the trades. Like, you can pick any industry. This is not unique, but like you're leading firms, you're putting together proposals, and yet you're doing no outside reading. You're not understanding the math behind your stuff. You don't understand like P&Ls. You don't understand like what a 10K, you don't know what a 10K is. Granted, you never had to do one, but a 10K for like, so it's an annual report for everybody out there that the SEC does. And like, I can go pull Jacobs and all the big firms, you go pull, I think McCarthy is like publicly traded, so you can pull their stuff. Like, you could pull all these firms and what they're saying, because they have to disclose it all for shareholders. And like, I think the first time I told my boss, like, hey, I went and pulled the 10K for Jacobs, and like, they're like, what do you mean? Like,
How'd you get that, you thief?
it's just like, I know Jacobs financials. Like, anybody can go look them up. It's not that hard.
So, I mean,
Yeah, not really an answer, and I know that, but
no. I mean, it sounds like it's a endemic problem that's not going to get solved anytime soon. Certainly not by you and I here, but it just kind of goes back to how hard are you willing to work for things? And, if we all have data and we all have knowledge out there available to us. It's just a matter of, are you going to go get it? Are you going to be the one who puts in the little bit extra and goes and gets it and reads books and hits the gym religiously every day and does all these things that can get you the extra stuff that everybody wants, everybody says they want, but most people are not willing to actually do it. There's no way to cheat on that sort of stuff. You can't say you're doing it and not really do it and then still get the benefit, right? You got to actually have the discipline, have the foresight to see it, and then go get it and do it. And then you will see the benefits. You will reap exactly what you sow, but you got to be willing to do it. And that's, I think it holds true in any business or in any aspect of life, really. You got to be willing to put in the work, the extra stuff, right? Because everybody does the bare minimum. Bare minimum is for losers, right? It's average. It's the C average students. And that's That's what we've become as a society, which makes it, I mean, let's be real, I'm no genius, but it makes it easy for guys like me to really do well, because there's so many losers out there willing to just sit on their ass and not put in anything extra ever. And we could go on and on for a whole nother show on that topic, I think, but it's interesting to hear, because you think of A&E firms, and especially the arrogant ones, right? Not that they're not all arrogant. We have found a core team of architects and engineers that we work really well with, because they're not. But there's a lot of arrogant firms out there. And I wonder if I went and started pulling their financials, and none of them are public, so it would be probably jail worthy if I did it. But how are they doing?
Pretty broke.
It'd be interesting.
They don't make money. Like, well, so again, the public ones, so AECOM, Jacobs, they make 1%. 1%. Like, granted, they do billions of dollars and they make like 100 million. So like cash wise, they're fine. But like, you go look at Facebook well, not this year, but on their books, like last year when I looked at it, they make 60% net profit. Like, it's just insane. Like bottom line, not even EBITDA, like bottom line net. So, or it might be 40%. It's like some stupid number, bottom line net after taxes. So like, it's just insane, right? Like in most, like a good AE firm makes 15% according to Deltec, right? Like their margins aren't that crazy. And so, and most of the ones that I've operated or worked in are 5 to 10%. The only one that did better than that was an ESOP. And so they didn't pay any taxes. So you take off all that money. They save 30% right off the top in taxes. So that works pretty well in their favor. So like when you look at all this, it's so doing the bare minimum in today's day and age, which really is excellent, is if you respond to emails, if you do what you say you're going to do, if you just like respond to people in a timely fashion, within 24 hours, like you're doing great. Like I've called people a day later and they're like, oh man, I never expected to hear from you. Or like, thank you for sending an email. I thought I'd just send some shit into the void. And it's like, what? But this is how
I hear that shit all the time, man. I'm sorry to cut you off, but like it's reality. It's disgusting. Like people get amazed that I call them back. My youngest brother owns a residential construction company of sorts up in northern Michigan, and he's literally like up to his ears in work, and he's to the point where he can't take any more on because he just fucking calls people back. I mean, he does good work. Don't get me wrong, little bro. He's doing all right for himself. But at the beginning of it, it's because he returns phone calls.
Yeah.
And that is what the differentiating factor has become. It's incredible.
Yeah. Like, so when we talk about like these inches, which end up becoming miles, is you just need to stack the minimum stuff, like stack 10 pages a day. You need to stack like going out and finding these other little things, right? Like it took me, I don't know, probably a good 20, 30, 40 hours to pull all the information out of Deltec, pull all these projects, separate it by discipline. Like I had it done by discipline and hours per discipline that would take. And then I did it on a square footage basis, pulled up all the square footage numbers for every single building. And granted, like in that firm, we did primarily K-12. So it was like here, one building type. I didn't have to separate it by that, but I separated by size. And like, here's the average for each of them. It was all pretty close. And then you have a number. But again, it took some time, effort, and like I had to think through how to do that. Most of this is like, it's not rocket science, and figuring out this stuff. It's simply like thinking outside the norms and like taking a little bit different approach to a lot of these things that create massive differences in how you do things. So all that to say, like, just if you join groups, if you read like blogs, if you go through and just read some like self development books, personal development, like it'll change how you look at the world. And it won't be in 1 month or 3 months, it'll be in 6 months, a year. Your complete outlook will change when you do that.
100% it will. And you got to be willing to play the long game, though. There's nothing instantaneous that's worth getting. Plain and simple. You got to be willing to put in the work over and over and over every single day, and you get what you put in.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I've got like, I'm sitting around, I got so many books around me, but like the thing is too, like nobody's gonna, until you show up, they will not know the work that you've put in, right? So at night when you go home, nobody knows what you do, right? Whether you sit down on the couch and crack a beer or a bottle, nobody knows, nobody cares. If you spent 10 minutes in the, or whatever, read 10 pages, if you went to the gym, nobody will know, right? Only you will know. And then, but they'll see when you show up, are you 100 pounds overweight? Are you smart and intelligent and prepared? Like they'll know when you show up, but they won't know what you do in the dark. And by the dark, I mean, nobody's seeing what you actually do, right? Like the Saint Bane and Born in the Dark, Batman deal, but it's, what work do you do when no one's watching? And that's really the question that you have to ask yourself.
That's the whole core tenet of personal excellence being the strongest form of rebellion, right? Is what you can discipline yourself to do regardless of everything else that's going on. So real quick, I took yesterday off. It's basically a holiday here in Michigan. The 15th of November is the opening of firearm season for white-tailed deer. So I went hunting in the morning, came back, took one of my kids out, went hunting in the afternoon, didn't see or shoot anything, but got back in at 6:30, whatever time it was, and I realized, shit, I haven't done my workout for today. I'm tired, like I'm achy, I'm an old ass man. I've been sitting in a deer blind all day. It's not good for the body to do that very often. I didn't want to do anything, but I knew if I skipped one friggin' day, I throw everything I've been working for out the window. So at 7 o'clock at night, I was down on my damn treadmill getting my workout in. And today I felt like shit in the morning, but I still got up and got my workout in before I went to do my big planning session. It's just about what you're willing to commit to, right? And if you're willing to commit to doing small things on a repetitive basis to better yourself, there's no way you can't win in this game we're all playing.
Spot on, man. Like I'm doing 75 hard through the end of the year. And the thing too, even like even if things aren't going your way, right? In business and life and personal matters, right? You're going through a rough relationship, whatever it might be, is to remember that so long as you keep your body in check, you're not, because drinking, as we can all attest at some point in our lives, does not make things better, no matter how much we feel in the moment, right? Like it does not help you. Granted, I'm a big fan of alcohol, love it, but like it doesn't serve you by and large. So understand that. And then two is if you can keep your workouts, what you eat, what you drink in check, and then read. I mean, the core tenets of 75 hard. Like if you can do that, even when the rest of your life is going to hell in a handbasket, right? Even when you have the hardest of days, if you can do just that, even though you lost everything else, you didn't win your day, you didn't get anything else done. But if so long as you get those things done and you can keep moving, again, that day will probably not feel good. You might have a bad week, right? Where those are the only things that you can get done and you can control, right? You everything else took you off your game. You didn't get anything else done. And this is like a speech for myself as much as for anything else. Is like, as much as that sucks, you kept moving. And as much as like you want to boohoo and woe is me, like you kept getting through to the next day and you didn't completely go off the tracks. you didn't completely derail yourself. And even though like not everything got done, you still move forward in the bare minimum and like returning people's calls. Maybe you didn't progress forward in like the business and all the other things that you want to do, or you didn't write that sales letter, or write that, finish up that proposal or whatever, but you still are going to manage to hit whatever deadlines you need to do to like keep everything going. And just that is the bare minimum to me, is like responding to emails timely, like doing the shit that comes up in a day. Like that is just doing the bare minimum. And all the other stuff, the like all my social media posts, all that other stuff is quote extra in performing. And so I think we need to look at that and categorize those types of things to what is I got it done for the day and what is like, I really crushed today.
And at the end of it all, though, it's like the t-shirt, nobody cares, work harder.
Yep. Yep.
It's motto to live by in our industry, especially, but anywhere. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares about your problems or you're not feeling good or anything about that. You got to work harder than everybody else, and that's how you win.
And with that, guys, that is going to be this episode of the Construction Corner podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and make sure to share the show and tag either Matt or myself. Till next time.